What's up, everybody? I am so excited to go through this presentation with you. So let me pull up some slides I got here for you, and then we will dive in if I can just find where they went. I just had them. All right, let's get it. Oh, by the way, there is a handout or a workbook, if you will, that can go along with this. So I'm going to pop that in the chat there for you, and you can visit that and download it. And then you can see that. Let me just make sure we're good to go. Is this working? Perfect. Oh, you just heard me in the background. Lovely. If you are watching this on my website and the chat function isn't working, and if you'd like to be part of the chat, you can just click the watch on YouTube button. But other than that, we are going to get started. So let's grab this for you. And then do this. Nope, that doesn't help. Oh, well, that's going to have to be how it works. All right. So I wanted to talk about this. I actually, well, for those of you who don't know, I've been in the weight loss industry since 2006. So I've kind of watched all the various fads and different diets and HCG and everything on the planet. Back when I was a dieter, it was all about 100-calorie packs. So we've come a long way since then. But essentially, there's been all these different things that come in and out. This one, however, talking about GLP-1 and Ozempic and all the different various things that fall onto that category is really concerning, but also interesting. It's interesting how it works and why it's become such a big fad. But it does kind of give me like, okay, maybe not as bad as fen-phen. Fen-phen was killing people. As far as we know, this doesn't kill people, although it's fairly new. So I just really wanted to make sure that everybody out there is educated. And I would love to say that I'm an unbiased resource, but I am biased. However, the book, The Magic Pill, is by a journalist who takes it. And I would say he's unbiased. So, good book to go to if you want a purely unbiased opinion. But yes, unfortunately, I have my opinions about how I think or what I think weight loss is really about. And therefore, there's some bias about how I would recommend that's done. But let's get into it. Okay, so what is the GLP-1? It's a glucagon-like peptide that's produced in the gut to regulate insulin and secretion. And when blood sugar is high, it stimulates insulin production. It reduces appetite, and there's differences in the levels of your GLP-1 based on weight. So that's what the research shows. You'll see in this little chart here over to the right that, and I hate the overweight, but we're just going to use them for the sake of this conversation. But you'll look at how the hormone works in the body. So with the overweight and obese, you'll see that you don't have as much of a spike. And that is a big part of kind of where all this conversation even started with. It used to be just for diabetes. Now, however, we see it in the use of weight loss and things like that. But this is kind of where it all started from. So basically, after a meal, your GLP-1 will spike. It's supposed to that boost sensations of fullness, and it also interacts with the appetite and reward centers in the brain. However, what they've noticed is that for some people, it's not getting that spike, and therefore they're not having that same reaction or response that others are having. That's sort of part of the cause for concern and why it becomes effective when then given as a supplement or a drug, because then we're seeing it mimic what we see here in the ideal section where it spikes. So manipulating that hormone is obviously possible. That's why we have the drugs that mimic GLP-1. We see this with Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro. We also could see it on the dieting side of things. So and this is not obviously tested by myself or even clients of mine, but there's a lot of diets out there will say that if you eat less refined carbs, if you reduce your stress, if you get good sleep, if you exercise, it will manipulate how this GLP-1 works in the body, how this in a more natural way versus supplementing the actual injecting it. But point being that they're saying there's ways we can manipulate this hormone to get to your goal. Of course, there's always going to be risks and challenges and benefits and rewards, and there's quite a bit. So, in terms of actually supplementing the drug, using or injecting yourself with GLP-1, um, they talk about this Ozempic face or butt, and maybe that's not a huge risk in your opinion. It's just aesthetic, but there is a look to it because of the way that it decreases your desire to eat and your excitement for food. And so you just end up eating a lot of food. But the one that's most concerning is that you end up producing less and less of the GLP-1 naturally. So the body becomes dependent on you injecting it, and therefore the body will stop producing it at the level that it would need to. As opposed to be really cool if you injected it and then your body went, oh, this is how this is supposed to work. And this is how much this is what creates an ideal scenario and then mimics that. And then you get off, using the injections. That would be ideal. That's not how it works. And that's not how hormones work. I remember back when I was, after I had my son and I was having a lot of joint issues and pain, and they told me to go on hormones. And I said, and I was 30 at the time. And I said, well, am I going to like be able to, is my body hormone that I need that you're saying it's too low? And they said, no, you'll just be on this. And I'm basically, they were telling me at 30 years old, the expectation was that I would be on those hormones for the rest of my life. And that's insane to me. Some other risks: increased risk of thyroid cancer, pancreatitis, stomach paralysis, bowel obstruction, loss of muscle mass, malnutrition, and then another very concerning one, the unknowns. What fen-phen, they said, oh, it's super safe. Go ahead, start fen-phen. It's a great weight loss drug, until people started having massive complications and ended up dying. And then they pulled it from the market. Now, I don't necessarily see it going quite that extreme with the GLP-1 because it's been used in diabetics for many, many years. So I think if there was anything super concerning in terms of death, it came out. However, as these other companies start producing it in ways that isn't the way Ozempic is, I'm sure there's going to be different spins on it. As that happens, that's I would be very cautious of. But Ozempic specifically has been around, um, but it hasn't been around that long. Like, so there's still unknowns. And there's unknowns in the way that they're using it now, which is for weight loss. In terms of doing some kind of diet plan to manipulate your GLP-1, it's going to be difficult to maintain and it's going to be very a lot of restrictive. It's going to be hard to start. The diet starts Monday is a thing for a reason. It's going to require a lot of effort, so you're not going to be able to live like a easy breezy, flowy, like this is a, effortless kind of life. And it's not always possible, like eating a certain way. Not everybody can afford it, for one, to, eat all wholesome, natural foods. Your job might not allow you to have, where you can cook a meal or what. There's just so many things that could get in the way that maybe it's not even realistic to eat that specifically. Like you can adopt parts of it, like maybe you eat less of this or more of that, but like to fully stick to a diet to manipulate your hormone, not always possible for everybody. Some of the benefits of the injections: it's easy, no dieting, no lifestyle change. It's extremely effective, especially at first. It resets your reward system. So we have actually seen in the research that things are changing on the brain level, and it turns up the aversion system. And that's why people are just not that interested in food or eating too much of it. Um, the benefits of the diet plan: you're not reliant on a drug. You're going to feel better and healthier overall as you're adopting new habits that you like. There's self-pride, like, look, I'm doing this great thing for myself. I'm taking care of myself. And it's ideal modeling for children of healthy habits. So not necessarily the extremeness of a diet, but just prioritizing your movement and your sleep and your stress levels and your high quality foods. Like that's great that kids are able to see that modeled, and that could create a nice change in the family of the lifestyle. So those are some of the benefits. But what I want to introduce you to the idea of is what we know about how GLP-1 works with the body and with the brain. But what if we could eliminate the risks completely and the challenges? Because Um, that's not the hormones change. That's not the only way to see change. It's just the one that's the sexiest because it's the fad. And what I'm about to introduce to you as a way to create that same thing is not as I don't know, sexy. That's the only word I can think of. It's not as sexy. It just isn't. Also, what's concerning about the G and all the different ones is that they don't actually know why they do what they do. Like they know what it does. Like they're like, oh, it's interacting with this hormone, and then as a result of that, this is happening, but they don't know why. And maybe that's will come out eventually. Maybe there'll be someone that fully grasps and understands why this is happening with this. But they don't at this point, at least from the last research that I've done, which is in the last couple months. So that's always a red flag to me. Like if you can't fully tell me why this is happening, I'm concerned. I have a lot more questions before I'm just gonna jump in and be like, yeah, let's try it. No, I want to fully understand why. So what we know is, decreasing our appetite, assuming it's too high, like, 'cause not everybody has too big of an appetite, but, feeling more full, feeling more satiated, not overeating, not binge eating, and then eliminating junk food, not altogether, but reducing it, exercising, having less stress, and more sleep equals happy, healthy body, happy, healthy brain, happy, healthy hormones. So that's essentially what this Ozempic and drugs are doing or diets are doing. They're saying because we're reducing intake of food, because we're specifically reducing intake foods that are lower quality, because we're increasing movement, that would be in the case of the diets, not necessarily the drug, because we're reducing stress and because we're optimizing sleep, which I would say those two aren't even really promoted with, Ozempic and GLP-1 type diets or drugs. But all those things combined creates this outcome of the happier hormones, the healthier hormones, the better levels of hormones, and the happier body and brain. That's all they can really say. Specifically why it's happening, they don't know. So if we can take the idea of like, so this graphics that you see on the top line here, if we did those things, but not in the crazy dieting way, we would essentially have the same outcome. So we don't need the drug, we don't need the crazy restrictive diets, because we're looking at the whole thing picture. But the question becomes how, and it's super important because especially these first three, the reduction of food intake, the reduction of lower quality food, and the increase of movement, how we accomplish those things, I guess even stress and sleep. So, how we accomplish these things is what's most important for why we create this outcome long term. So, when we look at restrictive diets and different things that talk about promotion of healthy hormones, how we accomplish these things is going to matter most there. So, when I learned about this other approach to kind of accomplishing the same goal, right? Because I was eating too much food. I was a binge eater at the time. I was addicted to low quality or junk food, which I hate labeling it, but it was like I needed sugar. I needed these things. It was consuming my life. It was all I could think about. My brain literally just was obsessed with food. So those things needed to change. Exercise, I was exercising for weight loss and it was very, very toxic, you know, obsessive. And I wasn't getting the results on the other side. I wasn't getting happy hormones, happy body, or happy brain. I was super stressed out. I was gaining weight rapidly. But when I approached this a different way, so yes, I still ate less. Yes, I still ate higher quality food. Yes, I still exercised and reduced stress and slept better. But the results I got in doing it this other way was that I automatically ate less food. So I didn't have to try to stop eating. I didn't like to eat less. I didn't have to try to eat more healthier food. Like there was no effort. It was completely effortless. I didn't have to avoid certain foods out of fear of not being able to stop. I said that past tense, but that's true. This is all true present tense. I stopped. I ate guilt free. I exercised more without fear. I stopped fearing weight gain. I lost weight. I became the healthiest version of myself. And all of that happened without a drug and without following restrictive plans. Even though the outcome was, yes, I started eating less food. Yes, I started eating food that made me feel better. And yes, I started moving my body, but none of it was effort filled. It was natural and it happened automatically. So, how do we do that? So, basically, the way that I look at this is the reduction of the food intake, the reduction or the let's say the increase of higher quality food and the increase of movement. We're really working with the brain with those things. Like we really have to look at what's going on in our core beliefs and our values and our thoughts and all of the more of the psychology side of things, the human side of what makes us human. Whereas everything out there on the planet kind of sticks with the body to manipulate these things and looks at the body like the body has a problem, the hormones are a problem, your willpower is a problem. And it really focuses on manipulating like the physical part of us. And what I'm saying is that when you switch that and you look at, okay, so the issues I'm having with food and with movement are not actually like a body issue. It's actually coming from the mental side of what's going on in my life and of stuff I'm not looking at over here and what's going on in the brain. And so when I approach it from there, then I have better results. And then I would say when it comes to like stress and sleep and those kind of things, that's when we're more dealing with the body. Because, for example, if you're not exercising, you might have a lot of trapped emotion or um, anxiety, things like that. And we have to physically move it out. And until we physically move it out, we can't sleep or we can't limit our stress. So it's like we're dealing with both the body and the brain, but I see them working in different kind of planes, if you will. Going quickly back to that book I talked about earlier, The Magic Pill, which just goes into depth about GLP more than I am today because it's a whole book on it, and I don't want to keep you guys here forever. But Johan Hari talks about 5 reasons that we eat or overeat and what happens when they're taken away. This very much mimics a lot of what I teach when it comes to food as well, but eat to live, right? We have to eat to stay alive. We eat for pleasure. We eat to calm and soothe. We eat to reenact psychological patterns we learned as children. And we eat because being overweight can psychologically protect you. So the 4 and 5 being much more nuanced, which we'll get into. But eat to live. If we only had to eat to live, we wouldn't have any problems, but we would deny ourselves of one of life's great pleasures. I'm a proponent of we are just supposed to eat to survive or food is just fuel. I think that high quality food is definitely what I'm moving towards in my life naturally because it's what makes me feel best. But I also acknowledge that I'm human and that food is more than just fuel. Sometimes it is for pleasure or comfort, which we'll talk about next. Like it's supposed to be. Sometimes we eat to fulfill other things other than just hunger and need to get rid of hunger. So pleasure eating most that they eat for pleasure, but they're actually eating with guilt and mindlessness. Like if you're eating, let's just say chips are your thing, that you would say, I only eat for pleasure and I overeat them and it's out of control and I need to get rid of that. You might think, oh yeah, I'm just giving myself life's pleasure of chips. But most likely what's happening is all this guilt and all this mindlessness because it would be very difficult to say in the same sentence that chips are bad for me and it's okay for me to eat them. Those two things are conflicting. And so what happens is we have to eat them mindlessly because how could you eat something mindfully that has these conflicting theories happening? So we just check out and then we just eat them and then we feel really guilty and there is no pleasure. We didn't get the pleasure. Maybe we went into it to get pleasure, but we ended up leaving with no pleasure because now we feel like crap because we ate so much of it because it was mindless and we weren't present and we didn't know what full and we're just guilt ridden for doing it because we think it's bad and we shouldn't do that. And even if you gave yourself permission initially, like it's okay for me to eat this, and then all of a sudden you're mid thing and you're like, this is not okay for me to do this because I can't control myself, right? This is all this conflict is happening. So that is not pleasure eating. Pleasure eating is when you can sit and be mindful and breathe and enjoy the eating experience. And that is necessary for life. If you don't make time in your life for pleasure eating, um, that is going to keep your brain very restricted. It's going to crave the eating experiences, the pleasurable, not mindless, not guilt-ridden, enjoyable eating experiences. And if you don't feed that, it'll start obsessing over eating. Now, by the way, pleasure eating and eat to live can coincide. Does for me. I love high quality food. I love like a good fine dining meal. It doesn't have to be junk chips, right? Like, in fact, that doesn't really do it for me anymore as I've gone through this journey. But I had to get through it. I had to sit down and eat the chips mindfully with no guilt, with full presence, with enjoy and pleasure and savor to get to the point where I said, I don't know that's necessarily the thing that gives me the most pleasure anymore. What gives me the most pleasure now is actually anything that's really homemade because I can taste everything and I can feel the energy and the love. And it's a much different, like, true pleasure eating. Emotional eating, given food to soothe, and this is natural and can be done with love and care. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like it has a really bad record, like, oh, emotional eating, don't do it, avoid it at all costs. But we are humans and we have emotions. Going back real quick to pleasure eating. Pleasure eating is typically only pleasurable if you have some room to eat. Like if you're full and then try to eat your pleasure food, it's not going to be very pleasurable because you're going to be uncomfortable. So I would always make time in my day for my pleasure meals when I first started to make sure that I was actually hungry so that I could actually enjoy the experience. Same thing with emotional eating. It's difficult to feel positive if we eat emotionally and we're already full. So it's not that you can always say, I'm probably going to feel emotional later and I'm going to need this food. So I better save room for it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you know, man, I'm really craving the nurture of this type of food. So I'm going to make time for that later today when I'm hungry next. That would be ideal scenario. However, in the not so ideal scenario, when we are emotionally eating, it's allowing yourself to do it because you're human and you have emotions and it's okay. The problem is when we and tell ourselves we shouldn't be doing and there's something wrong with us and all of that. Just allowing space for it is totally natural. Now, the second I said 4 and 5 is a little more nuanced. Um, we might be eating to reenact psychological patterns that we learned as children. And we really need to learn about ourselves and why we do what we do. So it's like, why do I want this food so badly? Why does it bring me joy or pain? Or like, what does it bring me? So this is really kind of exploring your relationships with different kinds of food, food groups, fear of food, how you eat, why you eat. It's just really understanding your relationship with food so that you can say, I'm actually choosing to do this. I'm not just, doing it out of, autopilot. I know, like, I crave this when this happens, and that makes sense. Or, I'm doing this, and this is what really helps me, and that's okay. As opposed to feeling out of control about it, like, "I don't know why this keeps happening. I don't know why I keep doing that." That's what doesn't feel good. You understand it, it's like, "Okay, yeah, this makes sense. This is why I do it, and I'm choosing to do that because it's very helpful for me." And then being overweight can psychologically protect you. This is the most nuanced. 6% of obese individuals gained weight after sexual abuse and assault. That's just one stat of how weight and food and eating and movement can be tied to something psychological. So if we have experienced that type of abuse, for example, we might use excess weight as protection. So no one will be our thought is, no one will be attracted to me at this weight so that I don't have to deal with someone's attraction for me. That would be a common symptom that happens after some kind of sexual abuse or assault. So we consume in a way to keep our bodies larger, or to be invisible, or to have lower expectations of you. Um, this psychological one is probably my favorite to work with because my background is psychology, and I'm completing my PhD in psychology, so I spend a lot of time in this world. Um, but we do need to look at, sometimes we're holding on to weight and it has nothing to, or sometimes we're eating in a way and it has nothing to do with the actual food, weight, whatever. In fact, I would say that's most of it, but that's a topic for another day. So what I have is the Lighten Up program, which does all the things that we talked about. And it also deals more deeply with why we eat in terms of eating to live, for pleasure, to calm and soothe. and to reenact psychological patterns. So all the things I talked about, it's going to walk you step by step through all these things. It's going to help you reduce your appetite and cravings just like you would with GLP-1 manipulation. It's going to help you crave the foods that make you feel best, and it's going to help you crave movement. It's all going to happen naturally. Reduce your stress and have better sleep. And this is done by using both the body and the brain, like I talked about. So we deal a lot with the nervous system, and we deal a lot with how we need to work with the body so that it can get to a place where it can fall asleep soundly, where it can actually let go of stress. In terms of, being overweight can psychologically protect you, this could take time and some more digging. Um, and you may find that because there are lots of things in the course that walk you through doing that, and you might find that it helps you do that. But this is typically when I work with people in individually or in groups to kind of dig deeper into that. I would say that the Lighten Up program, it's like you have to do that first so that you aren't dealing with the dysfunctional relationship with food and weight and movement, and you kind of like check all the boxes of like, okay, now I know I've fully dealt with all these things that are the foundation of why this issue is here. And then it's like after you complete that program, if you're finding, man, like my body is just really holding on to old patterns and really not wanting to move forward, then that's when we can dig deeper. So how it works is month one, you're going to learn about how we got here, and that's more than just how you got here. Like we as a culture got here, and then a new paradigm for health, like a new way of thinking about it that helps you really create the freedom for effortless change. Month two is all about mindfulness and nervous system regulation so that your body starts operating better. So we talked about happy hormones, GLP-1 being the one that we're focusing on. It's through this process that you'll start to see everything kind of rearrange itself to be more optimal and ideal. And then month three will be creating your plan so that this is something that you do forever, not just in the course of a short program. So if that's something you're interested in, it's just 6 payments of $67. And I'm just going to grab this link here and put it in the chat in case anybody wants to check it out. So that is the link where you can find out more about the Lighten Up program and sign up for it. But essentially, what we want to accomplish is, actually, let me say it a different way. What the GLP-1 hormone accomplishes, if I go back to this graphic up here, okay, what GLP-1 accomplishes is exactly, well, actually, I'd say these two. I'd say these two. So the reduction of food and then um, the decreased cravings. So that's what it does. It does that because of the way that it interacts with that hormone in the gut and the brain through reducing, um, increasing the aversion and increasing fullness. So that's what that drug does. So we're going to say it accomplishes 1 and 2. The diets are going to accomplish 1, 2, and 3. So because most diets are going to have some kind of recommendation for movement, but it's very possible that the diets only also accomplish 1 and 2. And what I'm positioning is that we can accomplish all 5, and we can do that without the risks the Ozempic or the diets and things like that. So we go back up to the risks right here. So we can get all these things that we want. We can get something that's not dieting related, that doesn't require a major lifestyle change. That's very effective, especially at first. That resets the reward system, that turns up the aversion system, that allows you not to be reliant on a drug, that helps you feel better and healthier overall, that increases self-pride. And is ideal modeling, is truly ideal modeling for children and healthy habits. You can get all that, and then decrease your stress and increase your sleep, all through the program. So that is what I'm recommending. Obviously, bias, like hello, but if not with me, with someone else, like really ask the deeper questions, the whys. Why is this happening? And now that we know this is what this hormone is responsible for, how can we create that same result without needing to be reliant or dependent on a diet or a drug? And you can. Your body is fully, everything this does to your body, you can also do with your body without the crutch. So that is my recommendation. I hope this is helpful. Of course, if you have questions, reach out at any time. Cornholemish.com. For those of you who are wondering why cornhole, that's the world that I operate in. And I work with cornhole players on psychology and stuff like that. And it's all the same. The same things I recommend here are the same things I recommend there in terms of dealing with your core beliefs, your values, looking at why we have habits and why we're not doing the things that we want to be doing, what's getting in the way of peak performance, whether that's cornhole or health or life. So everything is so much the same, but my background comes from the world of health and wellness, and cornhole being more of a recent thing because I think cornhole can really change lives because of how much it increases connection, which is another book actually by Johan Hari is a book on connection. So you can check that out as well. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me. And if you have any questions, just pop them in the comments of the chat and I'll be happy to respond. Thanks.